I'm going to share with you the basic introduction, do's and don'ts of 4 metal-edged tools that I use in the wilderness and that you can use on your journey with wilderness skills and nature connectedness, whether it's in a survival situation or your own backyard. Note, this is only a basic introduction into using these tools. With patience, practice and time, you can develop a safer relationship with these tools. We do run events. If you're interested in attending one of our events, check out our website, send us a message. How beautiful. These wilderness skills, survival skills, nature connectedness skills, whatever you want to call them, they're all skills that for all of our ancestors were normal, and not even that far back in the life of our parents, great-grandparents, they've had so much skill to do with nature and the wild. My father, God bless that man, rest in peace, when he was a young boy, he used to catch rabbits and feed his family with them. My great-grandfather, he was a blacksmith. My grandmother, she used to ride a horse and a cart to school. All of these things, which for us can seem like a novelty, for them were normal and part of daily life. It's almost as if these skills are on the edge of extinction. So I'm going to ask, please help me. Hit the like button now. Press subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for your support and help me spread the message. This is a baby axe, technically a hatchet. To make it simple, there are 2 parts to this axe. We have the handle and the head. On the handle we have the knob, and this section here doesn't have a name from my understanding, but I think it should, because it's really important that when we use this, we're super careful to not hit this against anything hard, because that will damage the axe and it sort of gives it a death sentence. On the head here we have, it's called the bit, and then the butt. If you don't remember bit, just remember edge. We have the toe and the heel and the beard. If you remember 2 things, remember the butt and the edge. The do's and the don'ts of the baby axe, the hatchet, is use the axe for felling trees and for clearing branches off trees that you're going to be working with. Use the butt for tamping objects, ideally not metal objects, but for tamping and woodwork. Do use this axe to look slightly Viking-like. If you're going to wear it in the hip holster, which is what I recommend, you always want to have the leather cover on it. It does look good, doesn't it? Don't use the axe to cut something that is right on top of the dirt, or where if you ricochet or miss, you're going to hit a dirt or a stone or something very hard like that. Don't use the axe to look too Viking. Don't jump around, don't throw the axe. Remember, it's a tool, act cool and professional. Don't use the axe to cut logs when you have the option of a saw. Don't put your hand close to where you're cutting with the axe. So this is like, don't do that. But I've seen people do it. It's insane. So the blade here, the edge of the axe, is what's called convex, which means that the taper here is slightly rolled out. This axe is not well designed for splitting wood, but it's well designed for cutting. It's a great tool for that. If you're splitting wood with it, it will get wedged in there. Another consideration with the convex shape of the edge is that the sharpening needs to curl around with the shape of the axe edge. Using the log as a barrier so that the axe doesn't bounce into my leg. The log in a way is keeping me safe because it's directing the force of the axe. If I'm using the axe on this side, I want to stand in front of where I'm going to be hitting and off to the side so there's room for the axe to bounce off and it comes behind me. This tree is commonly referred to as a dead standing because it's a dead tree and it's still standing. Makes sense, right? It is one of the most valuable resources in the woods because it's dry, dead timber that is up off the ground, which means it's useful to be used in a fire. This tree is so thick that the saw would have difficulty getting through it. I wouldn't be able to manage the energy going through there. So the hatchet would be a better tool for this job. And it's also a great tool for cutting a tree to that thickness as well. The bush knife. Being Australian means that I need to carry the biggest knife possible. Not really, but it boosts my ego. This knife is referred to as a full tang knife, and it has a specifically shaped blade which makes it very good for use in the bush. If we simplify the parts of this knife, we see that there is the blade and the handle. With the blade, we have the spine, the edge, the tip, the guard. Here, there is a curve in the edge of the blade which allows me to use different angles for different tasks. On the handle, we have the grip and the pommel or the tang. The pommel can be used for crushing or striking. Also on this handle, we have a hole that can be used for the bow drill method. The terminology full tang means that the blade is a solid piece all the way down to the handle, which makes it very strong and a very reliable tool for bushcraft. The do's and don'ts of using the bush knife. Do use it with a baton to split wood, to shape timber, to clean the branches off tree trunks. Use the spine for a fire starting aid, and use the tool to feel safe in the wild. Don't use it cutting towards you or anyone else. Don't use it to cut metal or stones. Don't twist the blade when cutting something. Don't use it on the ground. Put it in the sheet without looking at the blade. Don't throw it. If you use it on hardwoods, be very careful. These tools may look fun, but they're also quite dangerous. A number one cause of injury in the wild is human error. And we can negate that error through best practice. And best practice when I'm walking is always to sheath the tool. And if I'm not able to do that, I can hold the tool out to a side, preferably on the uphill side and away from my body. This reduces the risk of me falling onto the blade. This is the bush saw, survival saw, folding saw, saw, whatever you want to call it. It is a very useful tool in the woods. I've used this on some of the hard timbers in Australia and some of the softer timbers here in Europe. It's great for a few things, not for everything. It is having a retractable blade. To simplify this, we have the handle and the blade. We have the tip, the teeth, the spine, and the locking and unlocking screw. The do's and the don'ts and the sort of be careful doing it. So the do's for the saw. Do use the saw for cutting stable timber, about this thick or thicker. Do use the saw for cleaning off branches if you need to, and do use the saw for field craft, so cutting in notches into timber. or basic field engineering. Don't use the saw to hack at something to try to cut it off. Don't use the saw when you can feel it stuck by just pushing it forward. You'll just bend the blade and you'll ruin the tool. And be careful felling a tree with the saw. If the tree is vertical and you're cutting into the tree, the weight of the tree can pinch on the saw and you may not be able to get it back, or it will bend it. So I'll just give a bit of a demonstration now for what I was talking about. As well, when you use the saw, don't put your hand right next to it. It's always better to put your thumb in like that and stabilize the object. So what I mean is, like, if it's stuck, don't push it in because it will bend. This is an Opinel knife. It is a great tool for refined work. It is a very sharp blade and it can be very useful for cutting string, finer work like whittling on twigs and sticks or utensils. Also useful for cutting fruit, food, whatever. They're smaller items. So it is a folding knife, which means that it is not full tang. The blade ends here, which means it's more delicate and it needs to be treated that way. It has a locking mechanism here, which locks the blade open or locks the blade closed. Other than that, the parts of this knife are going to be similar to the bush knife, as well as the do's and the don'ts. The major differences is in the mechanism of the folding and some of the basic characteristics of the blade and the handle: spine, tip, edge, locking mechanism, pin, blade housing, cool logo, grip. The do's and the don'ts. Do use this knife for finer work, whether it is skinning, cutting fruit, whittling sticks. Do use this knife as a backup and keep it in your pocket. Do always lock the blade before using it. Don'ts for this knife. Don't twist the blade under pressure. Don't use it for the baton method like you can use the bush knife. Okay, so we have covered 4 basic tools that I use in the wilderness. Remember, the skills to use these tools safely in the remote environment take time and commitment to learn. I'm on a mission to connect people with nature and I want your help. If you have enjoyed this video, can you send it directly to 3 other people? Or share on your social media platform. Thank you. That's it from me. Back to you in the studio.